the F-150 Ecoboost engine. It's built to give the F-150 more towing power than any other half-ton. It's built to give it more torque than any competitive half-ton. It's built Ford tough. And now we're going to show the world just what that means. Watch as we take a randomly selected Ecoboost engine and run it through a series of grueling durability tests to prove how tough it is. In medieval times, they had machines like the rack and the Iron Maiden. Today, we've got this, Dyno's Cell Block 36D. Here, engineers accelerate wear, replicating 10 years of hard use in 300 hours.
And we learn about how our customers use our products. And then we take those and we crank them to the extremes. So we go to the extremes of the temperatures, we go to the extremes of the loads and the speeds that we see. It won't take us 10 years, 150,000 miles. We can do it over the course of weeks or months.
This dynamometer will simulate towing over 11,000 pounds up a grade steeper than Pikes Peak. The engine fatigue test runs the engine for over an hour at full throttle. And then there's thermal shock testing. It deep freezes the engine to minus 20 degrees, then shocks it to 230 degrees.
You're putting a tremendous amount of heat into an engine block that's already very cold. It starts to expand in very bizarre ways. Stresses start to develop in the cylinder block.
That's like going from the Arctic to Death Valley in 15 minutes. And they do it over and over and over. Constantly.
There's no way that a customer could replicate the same things that we're doing. There's just no road in the world that they could drive on. There's no way they could get from the temperature extremes as fast as we're doing it. It's just not possible.
The different tests cycle one after the other, hour after hour, day after day, for weeks.
So we've simulated 150,000 miles on this engine. After we're done here, typically what we would do is tear down the engine, inspect it, make sure everything performed. But in this case, we're going to take it and ship it to Kansas City assembly plant, where it's going to go down the line just like all the other engines, get installed in the truck.
Now, after you put an equivalent of 150,000 miles like this on an engine, you might think that's proof enough. But we're just getting started. Because we're going to take this same engine out into the real world for some real torture. Ecoboost engine 448AA, pulled from the Cleveland production line, stressed to the max for an equivalent of 150,000 miles, then sent to Kansas City to get installed in the F-150. Now, we've driven the same engine another 1,900 miles over the Rocky Mountains to the forest of the Pacific Northwest. This is Nygaard Logging. Their job is to get the logs from the mountain to the mill. For that, they need a skidder. It's heavy machinery. Very big, very powerful.
We got an F-150 pickup. It's going to try to take place of a skidder today. We got 22 logs, 110,000 pounds in total.
You don't have a wheel on it, you're just picking it up and trying to get the end off the ground and just dragging it.
So this is an engine that's been through a lifetime of work already, and now we've brought it out here. These guys are probably used to using big V8s and Super Duties. I think they're going to be shocked at how this vehicle pulls.
You guys, we'll do it, but I think you guys are crazy.
Action, Mike.
Over and over, the Ecoboost engine takes off like a shot with its massive low-end torque, dragging over 3 tons of dead weight up a 10% grade. If 3 tons doesn't sound like a lot of weight, consider this. Some of these logs outweigh the truck by 1,200 pounds. The Ecoboost engine produces 420 foot-pounds of torque nearly all across its RPM band. Compare that torque curve to Chevy, Dodge, and Toyota V8s. They're not even close.
I hear him talking about low-end torque and type of motor this F-150 has in it, and I'm pretty impressed. It's got all of our 22 logs up the hill, and they're ready to be loaded out for the mill.
Hasn't been one log that truck hasn't been able to pull up the hill.
55 tons of timber is loaded onto the hauler and sent off to the mill. For our friends at Nygaard, they can call it a day. But as for the engine, this was just a warm-up. It's back on the road for a 3,300-mile trip to Miami, and not for a walk on the beach. Ecoboost engine 448AA, 150,000 miles of dyno stress, then driven 1,900 miles to haul 55 tons of timber. Now it's traveled another 3,300 miles for this. Homestead Miami Speedway, the next dish of agony for our F-150 Ecoboost engine.
The plan here today is to be able to show and demonstrate durability and the longevity of this engine.
We're hitching up its maximum load, 11,300 pounds. Then we'll tow it at full throttle for 24 hours straight, only stopping for fuel and tire changes. The F-150 reaches speeds approaching 100 miles an hour, revving up to the red line hours on end, cranking up oil and coolant temperatures beyond what you'd normally get in the real world. At least, not without a Florida State Trooper on your tail.
Truck's still running good, all your temperatures look great.
He'd come onto the straightaway and roll into that throttle. We'd get a downshift. The engine RPM would jump up 5,000. We'd run 5 to 5,700 RPM full load, just like our durability test. Yeah, full boost.
Full boost.
Turbos glow cherry red, exceeding 200,000 RPM for hours at a time without a break. It's like running a 100-yard dash for an entire marathon.
When you come in, we'll get a tire check and check the wear. All right, driver, once someone in the pit next.
The engine is averaged over 80 miles an hour, pulling its max trailer load of 11,300 pounds for 1,600 miles. That's a distance equal to nearly the entire eastern seaboard.
This 24-hour endurance test shows that Ecoboost is really the future.
Now it'll drive another 2,500 miles to the Arizona desert for a grueling uphill race against Ram and Silverado V8s. It started with the dyno, where we put the equivalent of 150,000 miles on the Ecoboost. Then we drove it across country to drag 55 tons of timber. Then it was down to Florida, 11,300 pounds attached to the back of the F-150 at high speed for 24 hours. What can we possibly do next? Davis Dam, a charming little stretch of road that for about 10 miles does nothing but ascend. at a 6% grade. How is the durability going to be proven here on Highway 68?
This is a torque sprint. We're going to do a wide open throttle, taking a look at who gets to 60 miles an hour fastest, and then who gets to the top of the hill the fastest, pulling a 9,000-pound trailer.
This whole thing just seems patently unfair. I mean, this is a 3.5-liter engine, the Ecoboost is, and it's going head-to-head with a 5.7 and a 5.3-liter. You're basically just flooring it full out. Even after all the torture we've handed the Ecoboost engine, it still outperforms the competitors' V8s. The F-150 goes from 0 to 60 about 12 seconds faster than both the Ram and the Silverado. For the entire 3.5-mile run, the F-150 still wins. In fact, the F-150 finishes almost 43 seconds faster than the Silverado. Over 160,000 equivalent miles on the Ecoboost.
Harsh miles versus both the Chevy and the Ram, which are essentially brand new trucks. This truck has just tremendous torque. For that customer who is in the field working hard, the Ecoboost engine is going to be clearly what they are going to be looking for.
Or maybe just trying to get up a hill and pass a Chevy Silverado who's pulling a boat, who's essentially standing still. It'd be nice to get around him. Next, we're putting engine 44 8AA into a full-on off-road racer to run the legendary Baja 1000. Tortura in Spanish for torture. This is Mexico's Baja Peninsula. From up here, it may look like paradise. But down here, where they run the Baja 1000, it's possibly the most treacherous place on Earth. 1,062 miles of engine-choking sand, scorching heat, and jumps that'll shake apart just about anything. Just finishing the Baja 1000 requires a high-performance engine in perfect running condition. We put engine 44 8AA, with the equivalent of 163,000 brutal miles on it, into Mike McCarthy's customized off-roader.
We're going to put another 1,072 hard miles on it. The hardest miles.
The starting line, Ensenada. The Ecoboost engine powers the F-150 past all stock-full trucks. Before long, it passes 7 other vehicles at speeds up to 100 miles an hour.
Baja Pits will be there if you need anything. Copy that. We'll follow through.
During refueling, the team suspects something is wrong when the tank only takes 16 gallons. Then they realize the Ecoboost engine is simply using far less fuel than they expected.
We were getting over double miles per gallon average what we would normally get. We told them to just skip the last pit stop. It's a game changer, man. 40 minutes ahead of my schedule, so you're running faster than we thought, so I guess that's good news, right?
McCarthy and the Ecoboost engine have driven through the night and are halfway there. The truck climbs from 100-degree desert heat into the freezing mountains. The abrupt temperature and oxygen changes don't faze the Ecoboost engine. The finish line is within reach. Ecoboost engine 448AA roars into La Paz and across the finish line.
Congratulations, you officially finished the Baja 1000.
It's awesome. The engine's running fine. It's ready to go another 165,000 miles.
It's overcome 38 hours and 20 minutes of merciless torture. To put that in perspective, of all the vehicles that started the race, a third failed to finish. The Baja 1000 caps the F150 Ecoboost torture test. 5 challenges that subjected this engine to stresses no owner possibly could. Proof that Ecoboost has what it takes and what every truck owner wants. Next, we're bringing Ecoboost engine 448AA home to get an inside look at how it's held up. Ecoboost engine 448AA has come home. After 165,000 miles of severe abuse, engineers at Ford will examine this engine part by part to see just how well it held up. First, the engineers put it back on the dynamometer and find the engine, even after all it's been through, is still getting the same horsepower and torque as it did when we first started.
It makes torque of 420 foot-pounds at 2,500 RPM and a peak power of 365 horsepower at 5,000 RPM, working as good as a brand new engine. It's going to get shipped off to the North American Auto Show, where we're going to do a live teardown of this engine.
Good morning, everybody. What we're going to do today is a first for us at an auto show. We're going to tear this engine down real time and live in front of you all.
24 hours of NASCAR was expressing all the base engine parts. The turbochargers were spinning up and down. One of the reasons we know this thing is still functioning well, and I know there are a lot of questions about whether these turbos would really live, is, like we said before, we brought this back in the dynamometer lab, and we were able to generate the same foot-pounds and horsepower, which, if this thing wasn't working right, wouldn't have happened.
Hauling the logs was really about the low-speed torque, really stress the bottom end of the engine, the crankshaft, the bearings, and the pistons. So crank end play then is just a measure of sort of the actual thrust between the engine and the transmission. So there's a couple of thrust bearings that hold the crank in place. What they're going to measure here is how much wear we have on those thrust bearings.
0.12.
It's still within our new build specification, and another good indication that this engine has a lot of life left in it.
Baja 1000, that's just extreme torture. You're running the high cylinder pressure, high oil temps, high coolant temps. On top of that, that engine's getting shaken all over the place in a very, very nasty environment. We needed a robust piston to be able to handle all that. We have moly coat to reduce friction, and that's one of the first things we take a look at on a piston like this, is what the wear pattern looks like and how much is gone. And if you can see this, there's really not much of the moly coat gone. We'll go ahead and take the rings and make sure that they spin freely. If rings get stuck, you're going to wind up with low compression, low performance, fuel economy suffers, as well as oil consumption would go up. This piston looks great.
Last thing that we're going to have a look at is condition of the cylinder bores.
We'll measure the bore and actually measure the wear. When you go ahead and look through this bore, all the crosshatch is there. The crosshatch is critical for oil consumption. You want some oil on the cylinders to lubricate the rings going up and down in the piston, but you want to be able to control it. And really looking at this thing, it looks great, and you guys will be able to come up here and take a look yourselves.
So that's the teardown. Feel free to come up, take pictures, and just ask any questions you have. So thank you very much for participating, and thanks for being part of it. 150,000 miles on the dyno, 4 additional torture episodes. The engine is still in its new build specifications, so we could easily get another 150,000 miles out of it.
It took Ford engineers less than 35 minutes to tear down Ecoboost engine 448AA, something 165,000 miles of torture couldn't do.